he's clearly the number 2. And then I
Yeah.
saw people during that game like, well, if you would have told me he would have got this many targets, I would have said play him. Like, why weren't you playing T. Higgins?
We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. Locks of the week, position by position. These are the players that we have to have exposure to in NFL Week 8, bringing it all together at the end to try and build the optimal DFS lineup live. Lock of the week at quarterback, Joe Burrow. He's 7,800 at the New York Jets. This is an interesting one, Jake, because I guess we've come full circle already on Cincinnati. We were talking about them being one of the most pass-heavy teams in the entire league coming into the year, and then they basically just flipped the script on us at the beginning of the season, but at least lately, it's kind of trended in the right direction a little bit, right? So great spot against the Jets, so I'm with you on this one.
Not even pass happy. I would love to get up to Josh Allen, and I would love some Josh Allen, Stefon Diggs this week, and we'll talk about wide receivers in a little bit. Tom Brady's always in play, but the Saints defense is better than people realize, and it's better. Marshawn Lattimore looks like Marshawn Lattimore 2 years ago, where it's like, oh my God. Now, I'm not benching Mike Evans and seasonal and all that to be said. It's like you drop down, you save 1,000 from Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. You don't get the rushing upside. And it's not really full circle. I think it's a different path we expected for Joe Burrow to be this. I expected Joe Burrow to be among the league leaders in pass attempts this year. That was part of the reason I had him in so many seasonal leagues. The difference is he's turned into Ryan Tannehill, where he's throwing 2 or 3 touchdowns by not throwing 35 times a game. He's been remarkably efficient, and a big part of it has to do with his boy Jamar Chase coming to this team. But, obviously against the Jets, we just saw what the Patriots just did to them. And there's that concern that you run out the clock. It's Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine, everything. But you look at it as like, if they're up to a big score, it's probably going to be Joe Burrow throwing 3 touchdowns before halftime. Like that's really where I'm going for this. If it wasn't such a big savings, if the gap was closer, I wouldn't say it, but I'm dropping down to him mostly because, again, I haven't fully built the lineup, but I really want to pay up at running back and at least a receiver or 2.
Yeah, I like this this game for sure on the Cincinnati side of things, just because I think there's some people that still don't want to believe that Jamar Chase is in this elite company because he's priced there now. So it's interesting on that
top
perspective.
5 dynasty already.
Yeah, I'm for sure. But I'm just saying, like, the difference in price between him and T. Higgins, people, I already know at this point of the week, people are just going to play T. Higgins because they're going to see the box score, they're going to see the volume, they're going to see the huge difference in price. Like, Jamar Chase is 8,200 on FanDuel. T. Higgins, you save almost 2K at 6,300. So I love the T side of that, just like everyone does. But, like, I'm not going to discount the ceiling. And if we're going to get Jamar Chase at sub 10%, like, this is a stack that makes a lot of sense to me. So I love the Burrow play at quarterback.
Anything the T. Higgins price is ridiculously undervalued. In seasonal too. I think it's just perception, I guess, by the entire world, because I had people before last week's game, should I drop T. Higgins? And like, he's clearly the number 2. And then I saw people during that game like, well, if you would have told me he would have got this many targets, I would have said play him. Like, why weren't you playing T. Higgins? I don't understand it. I think that it's been over, like, Jamar Chase's ascension to the elite tier as a rookie has overshadowed the fact that T. Higgins is legitimately a top 25, if not 20 wide receiver.
Yeah. I always like gauge it by some of the comments over on TikTok, because I'll literally see like, should I trade Tyreek Hill for whatever, AJ Brown and a smaller piece? I was like, why are we even discussing trading Tyreek Hill? Like, it's just like people overreact extremely. So sometimes it happens the other way. Yeah, it's crazy. So I think we should move on because there's a lot of guys to talk about. The quarterback side of things, obviously, if you're paying all the way up, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, they're great plays. But Joe Burrow at 7,800, really good price. So let's move on. Running back locks of the week. There's a couple guys we're going to talk about. We're going to start with Darrell Henderson at Houston. He's 7,700. My only concern with this, Jake, is that he wasn't getting a ton of usage around the goal line. But man, as Houston, you would imagine that there's going to be tons of opportunities there across the board for them to score points, right?
It is, and this is a game script that we didn't expect. Nobody expected. Nobody expected the Lions to jump out to a lead onside kick. And the truth is, Darrell Henderson's still top 5, maybe he fell out of top 5. I haven't checked this week yet. I've been a little bit behind with life. People know that. But anyway, he's top 5, at least heading into last week when it was goal to go attempts. So it's not like, one game might have knocked him out, but he's still up there. I'm not concerned about one game. I'm not concerned about the game script going out the window and not what we expect. It's Houston. Even if Tyrod's back, honestly, you could argue Tyrod being back maybe like keeps him on the field a little bit more, and the game's not 30-0 by halftime. But it's against Houston. It's Darrell Henderson. let's go back. You know what? I'm going to use last week as something we talk about in seasonal a lot. And I know I don't want to keep bringing up seasonal, but it's a good point. It's like people won't go back to people that burn them. They don't want to
100%.
use players the next year. I don't want to go back to that guy. I remember what he did to me last year. Henry Ruggs, perfect example.
Yep.
Darrell Henderson just burned everybody. Everybody was playing him as top 5 at minimum top 10 last week, and they don't want to go back to him. I'm going 100% right back to him. I had him in my lineup. Did my lineup even finally cash? It felt like a good one. I mean, it did I tweaked it a little bit on my side, and that one did cash. I don't know if mine did for you.
Well, I didn't get a lot of money back last week, Jake. So I would imagine that the money that I did get back, I think, was from the lineups from the guests. So it was very close. I know that Reeves cashed. I think that there was one that was right behind it. I'm not sure if it ended up cashing, but if it didn't, it was very, very close. So yeah, I appreciate you guys getting me something back last week. Just a disaster.
Good.
But all right, so I'm with you on Henderson. 7,700 is a great price for him. I think that if he even would have scored one touchdown last week, he would have been a little bit more expensive. The next guy is someone that I guess if you're paying attention, he should have been like one of the primary bringbacks on any time you're playing against Detroit. But DeAndre Swift just continues to be under-owned. Maybe people don't believe it, but the usage is super elite. Like, this is everything we wanted Gibson to be and more from Washington, right? So DeAndre Swift, 7,900 versus Philly. This is an interesting spot. It still feels like he's going to come under-owned again, though. Am I wrong?
Well, because it's it's great use once we get to the fourth quarter. Now,
Sure.
Last week changed, and that's where the appeal comes from. So, and this is something else I've been saying for a while here, is I would love Swift on other teams. I would love Swift if he got use in the first 3 quarters. Going into last week's game, 70% of his production came in fourth quarter, and I think they had one overtime game. But anyway, I included overtime. I don't know. People can probably correct me if I'm wrong, which, by the way, if you want to do in the chat and give a like, that's for Joe, not for me. That's not why I yell at you guys, but it's only at 60. Usually it's at 100 by the time I get here.
You've
but
been
anyway.
nicer lately, man. People are saying that you're getting
70% of his production, fourth quarter and overtime. That's 1/4 of the plays being on the field. Last week changed. They finally used them right out of the gate, which was great. Now, maybe that's used going forward, and they saw the success you had even against the Rams, and partly the reason they jumped out to a lead, and they go forward with that, which if so, you could argue that DeAndre Swift is creeping on the top 5 running backs. So this is what it is like the floor is really high, even if he only is third, fourth, overtime, that kind of thing. But if they're using him the entire game, and by the way, the Eagles' run defense is, for my adjusted points allowed, which you can see on The Athletic, which adjust for strength of opponent. For running backs, this is the 3rd best matchup. Oh, by the way, the Lions are number 2 for running backs.
Interesting. So one of the things that I brought up with Reeves earlier was that, like, going at the run the sim stuff. So we basically can simulate this entire slate 10,000 times and see an idea of which guys are popping in the optimal lineup most often. DeAndre Swift is actually the 2nd most popular player in the optimal lineup. So interesting, 7,900 that he would pop in that as frequently as he does.
Real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to cut you off because you have it on the screen, so I want to mention it while it's on the screen. The Alvin Kamara popping where he is. I had this debate with Pat on his show, and he ran the Sims too. We were going back.
He's one of the guys I want you to tell me about, because I don't know what to do with them at that price. Terrible matchup.
That's why.
Yeah,
no, but it's not. So, here we go. So I sat there and argued with Pat because Pat didn't have him in his weekly top 10 running backs, and I argued for him to push him higher. We had this whole debate, and he ran simulations. It came out the same thing.
Yep.
Tampa Bay's not as good against the run as they used to be. They are still strong between the tackles runners, but especially for pass catching types, we saw what Myles Gaskin did to them. And Kamara, who doesn't always run between the tackles, as we know, gets out into space. And if they're going to go back to him, and oh my God, what a concept. You throw the ball to Alvin Kamara instead of just giving him 20 carries and 0 targets. What a concept. Yeah. But if you're going to use this is how you beat up the Buccaneers with a running back like Kamara. I love his price because I know people are just going to see bucks and stay away. I tried to slam Kamara into my lineup, but I just couldn't quite get to his price.
Yeah, man, this is one that I think I'm going to have to see. Like, I see both sides of it. Some people are going to see Tampa Bay. Some people are going to see the price, and he's going to be popping in optimals across the industry no matter what lineup builder you're looking at. I guess maybe the Tampa Bay thing is I guess a narrative we're running with, and we just assume they're the best of the league at defending the run, and then there's like a little bit more nuance there that we kind of need to wrap our heads around. Sounds like that's what we're saying.
Yeah, I mean, my adjusted points allowed, they're, for this week alone, they're the 5th toughest. They used to be number 1, and it wasn't close. Like, so adjusted points allowed, like, I'll give you, the number is 15.8. That's 7.1 under league average. So that's the entire backfield on any given week should score around 15.8 points against them. It used to be they were right around 9 or 10, which is an absurd number. And the biggest part about that is that 15.8 number, most of that's coming in half and full point PPR because it's pass catching running back damage. So while it's again, that's why I said it's still a tough run defense, but a pass catching run defense, it's not very good.
Yeah, this is good to know. I think that the running back position actually is really interesting this week. So this is a guy that you can play at running back. You can play at wide receiver. Cordarrelle Patterson, he's 7,300 versus Carolina. I already know what's going to happen because last week I actually had Cordarrelle Patterson on one of my main teams, got him at super low ownership. He's probably too expensive, but man, I stand by the fact that his floor, the way he's being used, is actually pretty strong, right? Like anytime you get a wide receiver that's being used in the high equity portions of the field, we know that, but also like the rushing equity that you get from a guy that you can play at wide receiver cannot be understated. Like that's like a totally different type of archetype than we normally get from these guys. And now his snaps are going up. They're starting to trust him more because it's one of the things that has been working with this offense, right? So I guess what do we do? What do we do with Patterson? Like I don't think he's going to be owned because people just like don't want to click him for whatever reason at that price.
And that's the thing. So I think that's why he's intriguing, is not that just at that price, but that price is less prohibitive than it was. Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't it higher last week? I felt like it was higher.
He was AK.
Yeah.
That's why
so
like,
it came
no
down.
one clicked him at AK when you had like Cooper Kupp, like Devontae Adams. Like,
and
no
I feel like they're trying to bait me. Like even in seasonal, I said this is like I finally gave the okay to drop Mike Davis, but I said don't drop him because he's still like of the AJ Dillon of the world. Like if something happens to Patterson, Mike Davis is going to walk into an RB2 volume. It's not going to be pretty, but it's going to be pure volume. So I say like I gave the okay to like if you have to win this week, if you have to make a move, you can drop Mike Davis. Watch, this is going to be the week we're all going to be sitting here on Sunday night saying Mike Davis just got 20 carries for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns or something stupid like that.
I hope not, man. I really hope not. And not to keep hammering Run the Sims, but like if there's one Falcon right now that still continues to pop in the optimal lineup more than you would think, it's Cordarrelle Patterson, top fives. Yeah, it's crazy, man. I guess like no one wants to click this guy. I'll say this, like it's the complete inverse of the Philly situation where all of the weapons are super cheap. Now in Atlanta, if you're going to be stacking up this game in DFS, like Patterson's really expensive. Calvin Ridley's really expensive. Obviously, Kyle Pitts now, after his explosion game, is really expensive. So it's harder to get there, but as a one-off, it is at least interesting to get there with that. Anything else to add on the running back position / Patterson?
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right, cool. So I guess now... not to completely bury everything, but I want to remind you guys that the show is on all major podcast platforms. So if you get a chance, leave me a rating and a review over there. Toss me a follow over on Spotify. Whatever platform you're using, it's going to be there. It would mean the absolute world. So wide receiver, locks of the week. It does feel like a week to maybe pay up at wide receiver as well. So we got Stefon Diggs. He's 7,300 versus Miami. We talked through it a little bit with Reeves, and man, this seems like a great price, right?
I mean, you're just asking. You're begging me to use Stefon Diggs at 7,300. Yep. Look, Stefon Diggs is not that different than Stefon Diggs has been. The biggest issue is just the touchdowns haven't been there. But against Miami, who on paper at the beginning of the year, just like the Giants on paper at the beginning of the year, were considered to be a fearsome secondary. When you talk about the top 2 corners, the same thing you go to the Giants. They bring in Adoree Jackson as the number 2 along James Bradbury, and the Giants haven't been able to stop the pass. The Washington defense was supposed to be so good up front that it didn't matter what their secondary looked like. Miami, Xavier Howard and the rest, they're so good. They've just been destroyed. Miami is one of the best matchups week in and week out. And if you're talking about it, I'm looking right now. Stefon Diggs has 1 game where he doesn't have at least 8 targets. Oh, by the other 4, he has 10, 11, 11, 13. Even in that 5 game, he went 2 for 69. His floor is 7.9. Right. And he just had last week where he had 19, or the last game, 19.4. Yeah, 7,300. This is just stupid. Like I said, if you can get Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs, and maybe you don't want to double pay up at running back, I would love that stack. I'm going to hint, go with the Cincinnati stack. But this is absurd to see him at 7,300. He's still in my lineup. He's still in my lineup even with the Burrow stack.
Interesting. Yeah, I think Diggs is going to be owned just because people are holding on to obviously the ceiling that he hasn't quite shown yet. I guess a couple of years ago, we would see like people bail on him a little quicker than I think they will this year, but I'm with you. Let's talk about Jamar Chase, though. We obviously mentioned T. Higgins a little bit earlier, but this is just such a great spot for Jamar Chase if people don't want to pay that price tag at 8,200. Like I'm very intrigued. If we get Jamar Chase under 10%, he's going to be in a lot of my lineups this week, I think. Like we talk about, obviously, weighted opportunity, the air yards, all of the stuff is there with Jamar Chase, like turning into like the true alpha. But people are going to talk themselves into T. Higgins, and I don't really want to just jump into that ownership. I could see myself having both on a lineup, but I don't really want to play one-off T. Higgins, whereas I think I could play a one-off Jamar Chase if ownership holds the way it is right now. I guess tell us a little bit more why you like him so much this week.
Yeah. First of all, because he's Jamar Chase. That's the beginning and the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
Even if the people, let's forget the whole drop situation in preseason, how stupid that was. There were still legitimate concerns that, okay, he mentioned the NFL was faster than he expected. So I actually drew this comparison. And, this is from somebody that said in my draft profile that Jamar Chase is one of the top 10 wide receivers in the top 5 draft classes, possibly even top 5. So I already said that. But I said, like Saquon Barkley, but not injury related, we might not see full Jamar Chase until week 3 or 4 because they had Higgins and Boyd. Yep. It was week 3 where he blew up against Pittsburgh. He was still showing well in those first 2 games because he had touchdowns in each. But we're seeing what Chase could be, and this is who he is. And I said that earlier about Dynasty. He's a top 5 wide receiver. I was having a conversation on my show, like, who would you trade him for? Maybe A.J. Brown if he was 100% because A.J. Brown also has the body, but it's like A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson. Well, does he have Kirk Cousins for how many more years? Like, we're already having the conversation of Chase versus the elite names. Like Devontae Adams might not have Aaron Rodgers. So I say that to say that's where the argument ends for Jamar Chase. He is Jamar Chase. He can go up against anybody. He can beat anybody. He has already squashed any fears about him.
Yeah, can't confirm.
Yeah, any fears about being able to get out, like that he would get out muscled in the NFL. So that's already out the window. So at 82, that's also why I like him, is because of what you said, is people are going to see Higgins and go away. Again, now just spoilers out the window. Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. I am going for the 3 stack.
All right. I like that a lot. Let's talk about one more wide receiver today. DJ Moore, 7,700. We just talked about this Atlanta game extensively. So maybe DJ Moore as a bring back. But man, I think that like sneakily a little bit, like Carolina's in a really good spot this week, right? And not really many people are talking about him.
No, they're not, and it's mostly because Sam Darnold, and people, had the assumption that Sam Darnold was better being away from Gase, and that Brady and Rule fixed him. And he's still, if you watch the game since week 1, he still is the same Sam Darnold, maybe 5% better. It's just in fantasy we saw the rushing touchdowns. But the one thing about DJ Moore is obviously the efficiency wasn't going to stay on that level with the way that Sam Darnold plays. But the good thing about him is double-digit targets every single week. I think he has one game without double-digit, and it was very close. This is just, I'm chasing volume with DJ Moore. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised if his rostership ownership is lower, even though $500 cheaper. I wouldn't be surprised if his is lower than Chase's is this week. Chase's is this week.
I'm with you. And if we just look at like this game, it actually doesn't pop in the Sims very well, but the one guy that does is DJ Moore. So I'm with you on that.
Volume.
Yep. Tight end, weird week. No Travis Kelce, no Darren Waller. Really not a lot to pay up for on the main slate, but one of the guys that we might be paying up for is Jake's tight end lock of the week, Kyle Pitts. He's 6,800 in that same game that we're talking about against Carolina, where there should be some fireworks. But are we paying 6,800 for Kyle Pitts after we've seen, I guess, the true reveal of the ceiling?
How about this? Let me ask you, are you paying 6,800 for a top 15 wide receiver?
I would.
There you go. And this is what we were hoping for Kyle Pitts. It took a little bit longer than people wanted. People got a little bit impatient and seasonal because of it. But Kyle Pitts is essentially a wide receiver in the NFL. He's their number 2. This is the situation we talked about in the preseason that some of your boy Justin Jefferson walked into the number 2 role. Kyle Pitts walked into the number 2 role. The acclimation to the NFL took a little bit longer, but he's still lining out wide as a wide receiver. He's still lining up as a tight end too, but now he's getting the volume. And you could honestly look, I'm not saying like I keep like referencing my show. Like, this is my show. We actually had a debate of Kyle Pitts if at the same position versus Calvin Ridley the rest of the way, because Calvin Ridley is very A-dot reliant and it's dropped significantly this year. And honestly, the past 2 games, and it might be like, oh, it's a quick reaction to what's happening, but the way that Pitts is playing and the fact that defenses are just focusing on stopping Ridley, maybe Pitts helps Ridley and that shifts. But as of right now, if I get Pitts at sub 7,000, I mean, they're going to see if I can get him in. I can't get him in my lineup that I have, but I would love to if I could.
That's why it's so frustrating with Pitts, because we knew that like this is probably where his price was going to end up if we were, I guess, correct about anything in the offseason. So as the season went on, like we're just staring at Kyle Pitts at like 5,500 on FanDuel, even less at times. And then he has this explosion game in London, and then he comes back to the main slate finally, and he's 6,800. Yep. So like if we missed on that.
I saw a 200K winner last week who had Pitts as the flex. They used
because everyone was on Calvin Ridley. But yeah, flexing
out
like
they doubled down to the tight end.
Yep. It's like the same kind of thing that you can do with Travis Kelce. There was a week this year where RSJ was super popular, and you just, I mean, mentally, you just play Travis Kelce in the flex, and you play him like a wide receiver because that's what he is. There's only a few guys in the league that are being used like that, right? You can even throw Gesicki into that in some degree, right? Because he's basically playing that wide receiver 2 role for them also. Yep. So if you did want to pay down, Dan Arnold, 4,900 against Seattle. I mean, they traded for this guy, right? Like they're going to use him, and like now I guess they're off the bye, right? So they probably have figured out ways to kind of probably use him a little bit more, get him more acclimated to the offense, all that stuff. He's just really, really cheap.
I'm glad you phrased that way because, Joe, they already figured it out. The 2 games, so his very first game with them, 2 targets, 2 receptions, not very much. All it took was 1 game because the 2 games before the bye, Dan Arnold is tied for second, only behind Marvin Jones with Laviska Shenault and Jamal Agnew, of all people. But the 3 of them are tied for the team target percentage and tied for opportunities. They already figured it out. It took that quick for the tight end, Dan Arnold, to get involved as a mix of the number 2. Of course, hearing 3 guys in the mix of 4 options leaves a little bit of hesitancy there, but for a tight end already at least being in that conversation, also coming on the bye, as you mentioned, also only at 4,900 if you're paying down, Dan Arnold, which, by the way, how many times have I said to you, Joe, look for defenses that run a lot of cover 2, Houston Texans all year long. The last 4 weeks, the Seahawks are top 4 in running cover 2.
What I like the most about this play, Jake, is, on DraftKings, I think he's going to be the stone chalk. On FanDuel, everyone's just going to play Dallas Goedert for basically $400 more, I believe, something like that. So, 1,000 more, sorry, on FanDuel. But I guess Dallas Goedert is the guy that people are going to be trying to probably pay down for. He's going to be double, triple the ownership of Dan Arnold just because.
I can see a lot of Gesicki and Goddard this week for people.
Yeah, exactly. So like I always like these plays that everyone just like talks themselves into playing on DraftKings, that like you can play them on FanDuel, guys. Like it's totally fine. Maybe it doesn't like go 1 for 1 in terms of like the point per dollar that you're saving, but the usage is similar, right? So I like the Dan Arnold play a ton. Let's touch on defense quickly, Jake. Obviously, San Francisco at Chicago, 4,600. They're a little bit on the expensive side. We also have the Chargers, 3,900 versus New England. Both great plays this week. These are your DST locks of the week. Do you have a lean for either one, or is it more of like what does your roster lead you towards?
It's going to be what my roster leads me towards. I am leaning for the Chargers coming off their bye. Chargers are a very good defense. You get the Patriots, who, if you look at points allowed for defenses scoring against the other opponent, so like the Patriots have allowed the 6th most points per game to defenses, even though Mac Jones has been relatively safe. There still has been enough turnovers, some being fumbles, some being, I think they had a touchdown in some game. But anyway, point being, it's a good play. Yeah, the 49ers are appealing. I think the Bucks are intriguing as well. But the funny thing is that the Saints offense doesn't actually give up as much as you think outside of the blow-ups, which that's what you're going for. You're going for the Jameis Winston destruction game.
Right.
The thing is outside of the destruction games, it's very rare that a defense scores a lot against the Saints. So I would think Bucks and Chargers, but Chargers because they're 3,900 and I save 300, then I'm going with the Chargers this week.
All right, we have Jake's locks. I want you guys to pause the video. Let me know in the comments your lock of the week. Want to hear from you guys. Jake, you ready to build a FanDuel team, my man?
I could do it. Let's do it. I started building as we were going. So this is now a mix. I've built lineups ahead of time. I've built lineups with you. And now we're going to do I have half of it here.
All right. Well, hopefully I don't mess it up. This team will be in the listener league at fanduel.com/Holka. So make sure you guys get in there before it fills. $5, 3 max, rake free. Giant prizes for like what you're getting, because all of that money that normally would go to the rake is just going into the prize pool. So it's one of those things that you have to get into every single week. Lineups from TJ, Rich Rebar, and Jake, of course. It's the battle of the guests. What are we doing this week, my man?
Yeah, well, let's start. Let's slam in the Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and start from there. I'm not actually starting with running backs this time.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is I guess unique for you. Normally we're just jamming in like the running backs, but we're going stack today. So we're going. We've turned you into like a GPP bro, man. This is a big moment for you.
It's a huge moment.
Are we going bring back on the other side? Or are we leaving it just skinny like this?
I mean, it's
I'm
Mike
not.
White.
All right, I'm not. I'm
The
not
thing is like
forcing you.
you do. You know what? I haven't. We'll see where we end up. I'm gonna save that for the flex. We'll see
Okay.
where we end up salary wise because I have maybe contrarian bring back with that
Okay.
if we get to it. So let's put in Swift and Henderson and see like what it kind of points us to here.
I'll say this: it's been a hot topic, the bringbacks, just because like I think there's an argument, especially for like really tough defenses or really tough offenses on the other side, where you can just get a better one-off play for a lot of these at times, especially if you're playing a small field. So Swift and Henderson, we got in there, and then you are definitely going to need some salary saving. But if we pick a defense, we would be able to. I think you're still doing okay actually on salary.
You think? Yeah, I think I'm looking at because the defense is going to be 39 because I'm doing the Chargers.
Okay.
And then we're doing
so 6K
Dan Arnold
the rest of the way. That's fine. And Dan Arnold. Oh, you're fine then on salary.
Yeah, I'm going to be able to have some wiggle room there.
All right, so Dan Arnold in there. Now you got 6,600 left the rest of the way for a wide receiver slot and a flex man. Tons of room.
Let's put in Diggs. Let's see where we go from Diggs. I think DJ Moore would be too much. He's at 77. So
now you got 6K left. So the range that you're essentially looking at basically is Jerry Jeudy, Chris. Oh gosh, it actually gets kind of gross. You can get Cooks in there if you wanted to go with that. Gainwell at 5,900 I think is interesting.
I like Cooks. Okay, so remember I said I got to do a
nice little mini with Henderson and Cooks.
You know what? I think it would be I was gonna say it's the contrarian bring back. What's Michael Carter?
Okay. See, we have 50. I mean that fits pretty well. 5,700. So basically, you can decide between
the target volume in the passing game for Michael Carter, who is splitting with Ty Johnson, who's a little bit banged up. And hell, if Ty Johnson's out, I would love some Michael Carter at 5,700. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, I think that like differentiating with that almost makes more sense than with Cook, because I think there's going to be a decent amount of Cooks and Henderson mini stacks. But man, you're very differentiated here. This is the most contrarian team you've ever built on this show, Jake.
I think so. I mean, you could get Crowder in there for 5,600 too. Crowder would be because you can't get the Davis. Crowder would be contrarian. You know what the interesting is? I still have 300 left on the table. Was 6. I'm doing quick math for everybody out there. You know what? Ooh, I was gonna say I missed him by $100. I was gonna say I could drop Swift to Kamara for a super contrarian to go with that Kamara I was talking about before. Oh no, wait. So 500.
I think Swift is gonna be lower than Kamara.
You think so?
Yep.
So anyway, well, that's what I was going to bring up as a potential play is pivoting from Swift to Kamara, but then I would have to save another extra 200 somewhere. So maybe it would drop down in a defense somewhere or something like that. But I was just riffing off on the side for that.
Yeah. It's an interesting. I mean, there's
maybe Chicago. You know what? That's what I would do. If I want to be contrarian, depending on the roster ship, you could switch Swift to Kamara, and then drop the Chargers down to the Bears against Jimmy Garoppolo.